Claire. She's a senior consultant at Turner & Townsend. This is a retrofit information support and expertise event, which is fully funded by the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, and it's delivered then by Turner & Townsend.
Welcome everyone to this session. If it's your first ever RISE Masterclass, then a massive welcome to you. But likewise, if you have been to lots of our events, podcasts, you've got the newsletter, you've been to loads of masterclasses, welcome as well, because I always love these sessions in terms of getting people to kind of interact and just kind of add to that learning for retrofits in England. So as Sophia's very kindly said, we will have a relatively short presentation. We've got some slides that will be sent to you afterwards. We will go through really about the common standards that you're really likely to come across in a retrofit project that you might be kind of bidding for, or you're already kind of engaged with a particular client. And so really kind of touching on some of the key things that you should really be aware of already. And also really thinking about the kind of why this is important. Absolutely, we want to really kind of see at scale retrofits across the country to really help improve homes, make them warmer, make them more energy efficient. So let's really start to have a think about what this is actually going to mean for us. We're going to start off by having a look at some of the kind of the basics really in terms of what this actually kind of means. So some of you will be really familiar with some of this vocabulary. Some of you might be in your post for a month or two. Some of you might have been working your whole career in retrofit. And so some of these things will be really kind of already in your knowledge bank, but for some of you, it might be kind of new. So we're kind of going to touch on what these are. So a standard is essentially setting that base level, that system, that framework or approach for doing energy works. It's about that kind of technical level of where things need to be. It's about sometimes looking at the processes that we need to be thinking about. It's also thinking about, okay, do we need ourselves to be accredited to a particular standard or range of standards in order for us to be able to deliver that work for a particular client? So some of these you might have already heard of. So PAS is a publicly available standard. So you might have heard of things like ISO 14001, which is an international standard for environmental management. You have to pay for that. Whereas a publicly available standard you can download. And if you haven't downloaded PAS 2035 or PAS 2030, I would really recommend you get a free copy of those as soon as this masterclass finishes, because those will be really helpful if you already haven't got that in your kind of knowledge and your documents that you're aware of. So any publicly available standard is there because it is deemed to be the most appropriate kind of standard to be following for a lot of different things. So for us, we're really focused on the ones around retrofit. You might have also heard around passive house or ENERFIT. So ENERFIT is the retrofit passive house equivalent. It's around, making sure that we are thinking about the whole building. We're thinking about it in terms of fabric first to then minimize any energy sources that we need to put in for things like heating. So it's about a different way of kind of addressing that. MCS is then around the certification scheme for those micro generation schemes for homes to kind of generate their own energy. So solar panels is a really common scheme that is aligned to this, and for a lot of projects this accreditation will be needed for you to do that. Energy Sprong is I would say less known, but it's definitely kind of increasing in its understanding and examples that we see across the country. This is really around really pushing the net zero, but also around really limiting disruption, but also unpacking sometimes the financial constraints around a particular project. So you might have come across all of these or none of these. And so it's just a really nice way to kind of start that those four things in particular, just to kind of be really mindful and be aware of. In lots of our masterclasses, we really like to understand the why. So for us in retrofit, the why is, why do we need retrofit standards? And some of you might be aware of this example. Some of you might have even worked on this project. Quick question I've seen. Yes, the slides will be sent out after the session. So this is the example, and this is Fishwick in Preston. They are still going through the kind of rectification project to deal with some of the challenges that this project ended up seeing, for a multitude of reasons. So we often refer to it as kind of when retrofit goes bad. And in the supply chain, you're probably aware of projects that have gone wrong, have gone bad, and there will also be a number of reasons behind this. And so unpacking that is really important. So this is an example where it was funded under the CEF scheme, so Community Energy Savings Programme, back in 2013. So what's that, 12, 11 years ago, at a cost at the time of 5 million. What it was is about improving the energy efficiency of homes on this estate. Sadly, what happened was there was a defective installation. This was largely because there was no detailed design. There was an absence of a ventilation strategy. So when we think about damp and mold now, we think about ventilation. We think about where are the key points we need to think about ventilation. It resulted in the installer going bankrupt. The remediation we've got on here at about 6 million. So they've already spent 5 million on it. We're now spending at least 6 million, if not significantly more, on redoing it, on making sure that actually each property has a design, it has a retrofit assessment, it is going to be done properly. The interesting point that we like to pull out quite a lot is the cost of those unintended consequences, and most importantly, the impact on people who live there. We've been delivering boot camps and masterclasses for a long time, and we had someone come to a boot camp who actually lived on this estate. They are now a retrofit coordinator because they wholeheartedly understand the problems that happened in this project that can be rectified and managed much better now to mean that we're not going to see this happen again. So we need a retrofit standard because we need to make sure that we are thinking about everything, that we are making sure what we are planning to do is the right thing to be doing. So the retrofit redo on this is including removal and replacement of external wall insulation. If you've worked with EWI, you know that that is a messy, disruptive, noisy job. The eaves, the fascias, the verges, weathering challenges there, water ingress. There was also challenges around cavity wall insulation, absolutely links into ventilation. That links into the damp in ceilings, in timbers. Also understanding that actually some of the systems that were absent, really need to be installed properly and kind of explained as well to whoever is in that property that this is how you need to use it. And please don't turn ventilation off. So extract fans in certain locations, that's there because of ventilation, to keep that air flowing through, and making sure that people have somewhere that they can live in. And that includes things like redecoration. So there's a whole heap of work to have a look at this. You can absolutely go and kind of use an internet search browser to have a look if you want to kind of see what's going on at the moment. National Energy Action, which is an energy charity, are one of the funders of the current redo on the Fishwick estate. So it's really important that now in 2025 we are doing retrofit in the right way. So why? We need to absolutely standardize across the sector in terms of what we are doing so that you have positive outcomes. We need to make sure that there is that quality of work that we're going to be adhering to. If we're talking about carbon, it's really important that we are ensuring that what we're talking about is actually achievable. It's also making sure that you as the supply chain are reassured in terms of what's going on, but also residents are put at the heart of it. So we are listening, we are talking, we are understanding that there will be challenges in different properties. It's also about that procurement process. So making sure that we have a really clear way of doing that and that we are procuring across the board to know that we're going to get an equal output at the end. It's also about some of that financial reassurance, really thinking about what it is that we're trying to do in terms of security. So from a kind of bidding perspective, that we know exactly what we're unexpected challenges are likely to pop into our vision as we go. If we look back at the history of it in terms of where we get to right now, this is just a very simplified method. There are lots of other kind of key things, but these are the kind of 6 key things that we really want to draw your attention to. So 2013 was the Fishwick estate, so 360 homes. That's going to be more than 360 people who were impacted by that. That and other cases, there are examples in Wales and in Scotland, certainly, that kind of pulled through this as well. The Each Home Counts review was launched. So it's really understanding about, actually, we needed to review it. 2016 saw the publication of that Each Home Counts, which then has kind of had the output of seeing things like PAS 2035 being created to specify those install standards, to make sure that we are thinking about all of the different elements that need to go into a retrofit project to mean that we're going to have positive outcomes and that those unintended consequences aren't going to come up. 2023, so 18 months ago, following a review of the PAS standards, they have been revised, and this is what we want to see in standards, is we want to see learning, upgrades, improvements. And then the 30th of March, PAS 2019 will be withdrawn and replaced with that new 2023. So this is really important if you are about to bid on projects, or you are kind of planning to bid on projects, to know which version you will need to be following. So again, understand that that the PAS exists and we need to follow that. So PAS 2035 and PAS 2030 are the key ones. It's then saying, okay, well, whereabouts is my project? When is it going to start? And therefore, which standard must I follow in order for me to be compliant? So when we're talking about government funded schemes, and the Warm Homes Plan absolutely has a whole range of different elements that has kind of come on out of that. So we have the Warm Homes Local Grant and the Warm Homes Social Housing Fund are government funded schemes which will be delivered by local authorities, combined authorities, registered providers of social housing, and registered charities. What this is really trying to do is make sure that from a financial point of view, the facilitation of enabling retrofit is there through these funded programs. So what it's trying to do is upgrade 5 million homes, including net zero by 2050. It's about pushing those EPC bands from below C to at least a C. So EPC, if you're not aware, is an energy performance certificate. Any home in the UK has to have one if it is sold, leased, or rented. So if you go and buy a house tomorrow, you should have an energy performance certificate provided to you as part of the kind of package of information and documents that you get in that transaction. It's exactly the same if it's a local authority, if it's a social landlord, private rented as well. So what it's trying to do is say, okay, well, actually, if according to that way of measuring energy performance, your property is D to G, so the poorest of performing according to that measurement system, that's where we're trying to target. So we're trying to target those homes to elevate them so that they will hopefully use less energy, they will be warmer, they will be safer, they will be less likely to be impacted by damp and mold. So what it's trying to do is really focus on kind of social homes in particular, but not limited to, and also low income homes. So these can be private rented sector, it can be local authority, it can be owner occupied as well. So it's really trying to understand where you in the supply chain might fit into this and have an opportunity to kind of work in that. Because it is government funded, there are certain requirements of the scheme in order to add compliance to it. So we've already touched on PAS. So PAS 2035 and PAS 2030 are both required to be followed by any organisation wanting to access this funded money for any retrofit project. So it's make sure that both the installers of a particular measure, so or external wall installation, have the appropriate accreditation to that standard to be able to deliver that. Trustmark is then the way that installers can be registered on a kind of portal to then work on warm homes projects. So there's also included in that, there's a kind of portal where things kind of get lodged and kind of information is held. So again, making sure that installers have to have Trustmark registration, is really important because it is a government funded scheme. We then also have for specific things, so low carbon heating in particular, solar panels, the microgeneration certification scheme is also a requirement. So just to kind of share, when I had my solar panels installed, my installer is MCS accredited, and I've also actually had the MCS scheme come and audit my installation to check that they had done everything according to the British standard for solar panel installations in the UK. So there are lots of different mechanisms in terms of that. But for government funded schemes, if you're going to be working on this, what you need to do is make sure that you have everything in place that you need to enable you to do that work. Deeply into PAS 2035 and PAS 2030. So as I said before, please do get yourself a copy of this. It is free to download. So if you go to the BSI website, there's a link on this slide pack. So you'll be able to do that. So it is the British standard for retrofitting dwellings. It was first published in 2019, and the standard clearly outlines how retrofit projects should be managed and delivered. PAS 2030 is then the British standard for the installation, commissioning and handover of those energy efficiency measures. You might also, because of the nature of your organisation, be aware of PAS 2038, which is the British standard for retrofitting non-domestic buildings. But in RISE, we're really focusing on domestic properties. So what it's really trying to do is making sure that that management and that delivery is going to be done correctly, because we don't want any kind of challenge, any real negatives to come out of the projects that we're doing. Please don't panic about this diagram if it looks a little bit confusing. It's really helpful in showing us the different stages that you need to go into and how it kind of interlinks as well. So really thinking about, if you are an installer and you need to have PAS 2030, it's showing you how it fits into PAS 2035. And it's making sure that we have that view of what it means. So absolutely go have a look at this, and it's really including things like the commissioning, it's the project inception, it's the monitoring and evaluation afterwards, and everything else in between. So just get yourself a copy. That's the best bit of advice I can give you, so that in your own teams you can have a look, work out where you might have some gaps, where you might have some questions. And what I would say is, if you do have any questions, please do send us an email, rise@turntown.co.uk. It'll be on the slides at the end. Any particular queries that you just want an answer to, please feel free to reach out and have a look at that. Some of the different terminology that comes out is around whole house retrofit or fabric first. And what it's talking about is really thinking about bringing the building fabric into good repair by dealing with any defects that might inhibit energy efficiency and might compromise any improvement measures. It will deal with things like water penetration and damp, so that the building is properly dried out, and any structural defects, so things like cracks, poor pointing on masonry, are dealt with. We can also think about developing how we might kind of deal with the kind of low-hanging fruit of measures. So things that are low cost, easy to install. So things like energy efficient lighting, improvements to heating controls or heating control settings are quite easy to do, a lot easier than, say, installing an air source heat pump, for example. It's also about improving the building fabric by means of insulation, air tightness measures, and by minimizing thermal bridging. By minimizing thermal bridging, we're reducing heat losses. And that's one of the biggest challenges with homes across the UK, absolutely in England, around that reducing that heat loss. Because if we can reduce the amount of heat that we are heating outside with, we're going to reduce the amount of heat that needs to be in that home. So it's really thinking about, if we get the fabric right, we might be able to reduce the required capacity of any heating system that we still might need to be including in our property. So when we notice that we've done improvements in insulation and air tightness, we notice also that ventilation absolutely has to be part of this. So making sure that we have planned air movement. We want air movement in our homes, but we want to control it, we want to manage it, and we want to make sure that it isn't something that just happens because actually there's a leaky door or the windows haven't been fitted. It's around making sure that we are satisfying that remaining heat demand as efficiently as possible by using as efficient heating technology as possible. This might include responsive, intelligent, or smart controls. There might be, at the moment, it might be an on-off on the boiler. That might be how the heating system works. But actually, we can have much more intelligent systems that might recognize when someone is in a room and therefore adapt that heating level. So it's really thinking about how we can do all of that. Using low to zero carbon energy technology as well. So things like solar panels on roofs to top up that performance of the dwelling, to get them to that EPC level, but also to get them to that level where actually they are relying less on the grid for their energy sources. Within PAS as well, there are different roles, and you in the supply chain will fit in different places. You might be the retrofit coordinator. You might be, as part of your contract, putting forward someone to be that retrofit coordinator. You might be a sole trader, and that might be your role. That might be what you're doing. But you also might fit into some of these other categories. You might be a professional designer, architectural in background. It might be that you are much more of that advice person, talking about the options, the benefits. It might be that you're much more involved in the stage at the end, so the evaluation and monitoring. Monitoring might absolutely be your thing, or you might be the installer that is going to actually do that internal wall insulation, do that heating controls, whatever the package might be. So there's a whole range of different roles. Again, these are really clearly outlined in PAS 2035 and PAS 2030 in terms of what that means and which stages those fit into of the whole process of retrofit. It's really important to make sure that for any government funded scheme, so the Warm Homes as a government funded scheme, making sure that you do have that accreditation. And so what we're doing here is just outlining those very kind of brief steps to kind of enable you to do that. So it's really thinking about what do we have and what's missing. So each organisation on the call today will be different. You will have different experience, different numbers, and so work out where you might fit in this. Think about what roles you therefore need to be accredited for. Make sure you kind of get that training secured, that kind of provider, and make sure that you then do the coursework, you do the kind of assessments, and you can get that nice big tick that means that you can then go for some of these projects. With 2030, so this is the particular measures as an installer that you want to go for. It's again a very similar way, but it is much more specific around, we want to do internal wall insulation. And so therefore it's making sure that you have the required detail to get certified to be able to say that you are a PAS 2030 installer for internal wall insulation because you've done this certificate. So making sure that you are meeting the requirements, you're getting that paperwork, and also importantly as an installer that you're keeping up to date, because designs change, new products come on the market, new products are approved, making sure that you have that continual improvement loop. So hopefully the kind of phrase CPD is absolutely something that you are already aware of. Moving on to Trustmark then. So Trustmark is then the kind of the portal for making sure that tradespeople who are going to be involved in this project are meeting those required levels and high standards in construction, but specifically for retrofit. So it's making sure that as an organization, you have that particular certificate, not certificate, that kind of ability to say that you are Trustmark approved, so that you show your understanding around understanding technical standards that exist. So coming back to PAS, but also specific ones that you might be involved with. So I mentioned solar panels again. There are British standards that relate to the install of solar panels in UK homes. So it's about making sure that you have that technical expertise, because what it's trying to do is make sure that we have that consumer protection and an element of financial assurance about what people are saying they're going to do. They're going to do it because they are capable and have experience. They have sign off. They're accredited, and the process and the kind of in with the portal, it's about that quality element as well. With Trustmark, it's also that Trustmark themselves have a role to play. So it's making sure that actually anyone who is doing that project should make sure that they are accredited to that particular one. It's also around particular roles as well. So I've already mentioned retrofit coordinator. It's making sure that they are being managed by someone who meets the PAS 2035 requirements. Trustmark themselves hold what is known as a data warehouse for project traceability, which particularly helps with compliance audits, understanding if there is change of personnel, for example. People move on, people change, people retire. So it's understanding that we've got that traceability on documents, information. Things like warranties, guarantees are really essential in terms of that data warehouse. And also then as a longer term aim, really thinking about the enhancement of practices and those positive outcomes for any retrofit project that we might see. In terms of that lodgement, it's making sure that all of that is lodged, and we've put a little kind of image so you can kind of see what it looks like. Again, it's really making sure that it's those kind of compliance elements are in there. Things like handover documents, making sure that they are kind of going into that. We've talked about energy performance certificates, getting to a C or beyond. Having that information, having the SAP outputs, all of that kind of information, as well as things like stock condition. And importantly, one of the key things that came out of Every Home Counts was making sure that we wanted to say, this is the outcome we want for this particular property, and setting that out at the beginning to then make sure that we can trace that back when we get to the kind of finish point to see actually if that was achievable. So things like if we wanted to take it from a EPC-G to an EPC-C, we're wanting to significantly reduce the energy consumption. We are wanting to reduce the reliance on fossil fuels. Whatever it might be, it's those intended outcomes. It's a really powerful piece that came out of Every Home Counts. So absolutely go have a look at the portal. If you're already registered, have a look at what it means. Get that familiarity with what that kind of looks like. Can be really helpful in terms of knowing what maybe templates you need to be having in your organization. So we've touched on MCS before. It's useful to kind of have a look through and see what we are kind of talking about. It is a UK recognised certification scheme for small scale renewable products and their installation. By having that membership of MCS, it is demonstrating that you are going to adhere to recognized industrial kind of standards, particularly around quality, competency, and compliance. So again, it's really pulling out those ideas in terms of making sure that you are the right people to be doing the job, because as an external scheme has said that you are competent at doing that. It also provides access to a growing market. So an increasing number of homeowners are looking for that MCS certificated organizations to deliver their installations. And it's really making sure that it's considering safety and regulation, that everything is being installed as it should be. And so it's a really powerful logo to be able to display. If you need more details, absolutely go and have a look at their website to get those that further detail. If not, you can drop us an email and we can try and answer that for you. In terms of the technologies that are covered in there, absolutely solar heating is in there, solar PV, micro winds, so very much very small turbines here. What we find in urban settings is that can be really challenging. So if you work particularly in rural locations, you might find that micro wind is something that you look at in a little bit more detail. It's also things around heat pumps, so whether that is ground, water or air. Micro cogeneration, so again, think about how that can work. Storage as well as biomass as well. So there's a whole range of different technologies. If it's not something that you are doing now, but you want to do in the future because there is a demand, absolutely look at the kind of the needs for that skill, that certification to enable you to then get that MCS accreditation. As with any standard and kind of compliance, there are a number of different things that you need to be including here. So here we've got the 18 kind of requirements. You can hopefully see that this covers a range of different topics in terms of, where you're trading from, your personnel, your software control, understanding your purchasing, your testing, your records, complaints is in there. As well as health and safety. So make sure that you kind of have all of that in place. Again, reach out to MCS in the first instance if there is a particular query that you have around a particular element of those. One thing to note about a lot of these things, and particularly for MCS, is around making sure that records are kept. We don't want to be losing records. We want to be able to check and see what has occurred, what has taken place, because bits of paper, I'm sure, hopefully you will agree, sometimes go missing. So it's making sure that there is that place that we can store these, that mean that we can find that information really, really importantly. So things like quotations, risk assessments, MCS certificates that have been produced. What we want to see is that kind of record that is demonstrating how the design and the installation has met the installation requirements for MCS for that particular project. So it's about having those records. It's about making sure that they are suitable, that they are safely secured, and that they've been completed properly. So just spotlighting on records in particular, that sometimes that can be a bit of area of challenge. So coming to kind of pull together some of the other elements to kind of really think about. Like Sophia said at the beginning, this is very much about kind of really kind of doing that big overview for you. Please do download copies of both PAS 2035 and PAS 2030. Really useful documents to have a look at, to make sure you've got a copy of, just to understand some of the particular nuances in there for any project that you are going for, that you're bidding for, any frameworks as well that you want to be going for, that you have that knowledge, that understanding. If you're really interested in kind of more of the kind of why we've got to where we are, really have a look at the Each Home Counts report. Some really interesting findings in there, and some explanations as to why that is, as well as the MCS documents that we've just kind of talked over just briefly. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is a RISE Masterclass, which is provided through Turner and Townsend on behalf of DESNES. We have loads and loads and loads of masterclasses, toolkits that you can download, you can share, you can attend, you can watch back. And so there's a whole range of different ones that we've just highlighted some of them just on this slide. And when you get these slides, there will be clickable links. So you'll be able to just click into that and find that. So things around MCS, things around past 2035, you know, the changes that kind of came through with the 2019 uplift to the 2023 version. Also things like supply chain advice pack, introduction to Trustmark, lots and lots of different resources there for you. We also have some really specific supply chain ones that we really just wanted to highlight. These are live events, so just like this one right now, these are live events, and I'd really recommend, if you have the time, if you don't, send a colleague along, or make a note and go and have a look at the recorded version afterwards, so that you've got that, you can watch it at whenever time you like. We were looking at some of the data, and some people actually watch some of the masterclasses on Christmas Day. So they're there for you to use. They are absolutely there as a resource for anyone to go and have a look at. So I'd really recommend these ones. These are the next 4 that are coming up. So past 2035, much more of a detailed dive into that introduction around that. Procurement is then on the 30th. Trustmark and MCS is going to be on the 6th of Feb, and then working with housing providers is on the 13th of February. Like I said, if you have any particular queries, you can drop me an email if you would really like. So it's claire.brown@turntown.co.uk. If it's much more general, please do feel free to email rise@turntown.co.uk. If you've got anything really, really particular that you would like to kind of get answered, don't worry about how you might feel about that question, but yeah, absolutely, just drop us an email. We have really fantastic colleagues who look after that inbox, and if they can't find the answer, they will come and find a subject matter expert and get you a response. If you're happy to just go on the website as well, that's riseretrofit.org.uk, and hopefully you'll be able to find all the masterclasses, the podcasts, the toolkits that I have been talking about.